Welcome back to the Hauntsville Cryptcast. I'm Anthony.
I'm Carl Paolino. How are you, Anthony?
I'm doing great, Carl. How are you?
Very good.
I'm very excited for you to join us today. I am here with our special guest, Carl Paolino. You may not know right off the bat whether or not you know Carl or his name sounds familiar, but I promise you, when you hear all the things Carl's been involved in, you know Carl. You know Carl's work. Carl, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I've been in the entertainment industry for over 40 years, and I've worked on hundreds of television commercials. I've worked on some Broadway shows. I've done a lot of live events. I've worked on some features. But I think the thing that everyone remembers, especially if you're in your late 20s, your 30s, and your 40s, and above, you remember the MTV days because they're gone now. But in the heyday of MTV, I worked on a little show that changed the course of uh, our attitude, and that was called Celebrity Deathmatch.
Fantastic. Yeah, I was a big Celebrity Deathmatch fan. It was how I got some of my information about pop culture, because as somebody who wasn't crazy about pop culture, this was a quick recap, and I got to see some great celebrities duke it out.
Nice.
So that aside, we are here to discuss something very different. Carl, you have a new book coming out, correct?
Yeah, we're in the process of completing a graphic novel. It is for middle grade, so that would be your Harry Potter age. And it's a fantasy, and it's called Penny Poisonberry and the Gothic Kingdom. And we are about 75% done with it. The book will be over 100 pages when it's completed. I financed most of it myself. I wanted to be 100% sure I understood how the publishing industry worked. Having been in the entertainment industry, I've made this transition, and I did publish my first graphic novel called Spontanea, and that's available on Ingram Spark for if you're a library. It's also available on Amazon and, of course, through me. And I do a number of trade shows on the East Coast. So you could always come by, say hello. I'll be happy to autograph the books. But Penny Poisonberry is a little project I've been kicking around for a very long time. And we're in the process of trying to finish it, and I need some extra help. So a Kickstarter I felt was the way to go. And we've got some neat little add-ons and rewards connected to it. So I'm hoping we could all spread the word a little bit, and let's get that going. In about a week or so is when we'll probably launch.
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of amazing things come out of Kickstarter, and especially as a horror fan, as a Gothic fan, there's so much support from the community out there right now. I think this is absolutely the way to go. And it sounds like, from the fact that this is not your first rodeo when it comes to graphic novels, this is a surefire thing for you and the people who are willing to back this project. There's a lot of times on Kickstarter where things don't always come into fruition, but the fact that you've got 75% of it done and you've done this yourself, that speaks volumes to the people who are going to be interested in getting behind this Kickstarter.
I'd like to believe so because I've also backed several projects on Kickstarter. Mostly any friends of mine that email me and like, hey, I could use some help here. I always throw in whatever I can, 20 bucks, 50 bucks. And when it says, do you want rewards? And I always say no. I'm doing it because I want to help my friends. But I've also invested in a couple of projects where I got half of what was guaranteed to me, and then the person seems to have disappeared. So I know exactly how someone would feel if they backed the project and it wasn't finished. To this end, I say when you look at our Kickstarter page, you're going to see the list of credits that I have behind me. And the artist is Mazia Migliori, and she lives in Italy, and she's an amazing illustrator. I think she should be working for Disney. Uh, and she did, I'm saying somewhere around 60 or 70 pages at this point. And we just need that extra help to get that done. My colorist is Antonella Tiburcio, and she lives in Argentina. And they're both so incredibly talented. And I'll have videos from them as well as a video from me. And then we've got some very interesting little perks, little gifts that you would get if depending on, how much you invest, like the way Kickstarter works. And we have everything from fridge magnets to a metal lunchbox tin. We're working on a puzzle right now. I love puzzles. But, during COVID, you needed to find things to do. So I was buying these 1,000-piece puzzles, and I'm like, this is like a lost craft that people don't enjoy as much as I think they should. I think it's very easy to pick up the video game controller and just get lost. I mean, it's I understand it, but puzzles are wonderful. So we're working on puzzles of the two varying covers that are
That's
going to
incredible.
be your option when you back Penny Poisonberry on Kickstarter. And let's see if I left anything out. That's the most part of it. That's the biggest part.
I love that you chose to go the puzzle route. That, like you said, during COVID, it really was a good way to kind of relax, unwind, and um, just kind of celebrate that. But my mom and my wife and I were big into puzzles.
Oh,
We
nice. I didn't know
really
that.
started getting into it around then, and um, I think that's a good way to kind of bond over a book like this. It's a middle grade book, so
Yes.
it's going to be something that parents are able to share with their kids,
Yes.
and vice versa. Kids who are excited about it are going to want to talk about this with their parents. And so to have something to actually play along with in this medium, I think that's a great perk to really look at when it comes to something like this.
Well, thank you for verifying my train of thought. Because one of the things I thought about was, do I go with a 500 piece? Do I go with a 1,000 piece? And then I thought, if it's a child reader who's around 10, 12 years old, they may want to be around that 500 piece, but I'm going to offer the 1,000-piece puzzle also, because that's more exciting for me. That keeps me entertained for like a day and a half. I'm a very fast puzzle builder. That's just me. It's like once I get into it, I can't get away from it. I gotta like sit there and I gotta becomes an obsession. Um, but yeah, that I never thought of it quite that way, but that's a great way of framing the connection. Um, the book itself is I'm calling it fantasy horror, which is really what I think Harry Potter is. I think that's fantasy horror. Everything from Nightmare Before Christmas, Corpse Bride. I'm thinking the Stranger Things. I'm thinking the Wednesday TV series or streaming series. I'm thinking anyone who loves those type of shows, I think would really like Penny Poisonberry. I think it would fit right into that kind of feeling. I don't want to give too much away about Penny, but half her family comes from the Gothic Kingdom, and I don't want to give away exactly what the Gothic Kingdom is and how it exists, but she's kind of being hid here in our world, and her world gets turned upside down when a couple of things happen. One is she finds out she has to attend public school after having been homeschooled her whole life. So she's a very mature 12-year-old, and she finds the students in public school to be cruel and the teachers to be kind of daffy in the head, and it's kind of an upward, it's that fish fighting upstream kind of story. And I'm hoping everyone will connect with. To me, I write things that I find interesting, things that I would like to read, that I would like to read to my kids. Can't do that anymore. My kids are your age or older. But but it's always there. I like to believe that, if you enjoy a good story and good dialogue, which is what I love about graphic novels, is that you have the opportunity to really fill in the blanks with your characterization. Not every character should talk the same. They should each have their own motivations. They should each have their own fears and conflicts. And that's what brings her and two other students in the room together. That one is sort of a prankster and tries to play a joke on her, and that backfires because you're not going to do this to Penny. She's a sharp kid. She catches it. She's not afraid of large tarantulas and pythons and rats and other creepy things that the average people are. So that's where we are.
I love that you're tapping into the Gothic, especially now. We are truly in such a Gothic renaissance right now with things like Nosferatu and Frankenstein making such a comeback. And I think, especially like you had even said with Nightmare Before Christmas, these are those timeless classics that, parents are going to share with their kids. Kids are going to look at as we talk about it in horror all the time. It's almost like the Gothic and the dark is a taboo. But when done right, it's a safe taboo for them to explore. It's a stepping stone. You get something like The Nightmare Before Christmas that intrigues them into the sort of darker Gothic elements of life, but they're safe to explore it and have fun with it. Um, I want to get a feel for what the ideas of a Gothic are for you in this world.
Oh, okay. Um, Mostly it's like a period piece. The Gothic Kingdom is sort of a period piece, and it has to do with your belief system and what you're either afraid of or what you're willing to welcome. So it's that type of alternate universe, which I think is a very universal thing right now. The whole idea of alternate universes. My personal belief is that we all live in our own personal I like your drinking cup, by the way. What is that, a skull?
Thank you. It is the
Nice.
skull of my enemies.
Ah, the skull of your enemies. How nice. No, I just have a regular clear. Nothing going on there. But I also, to me, when I was growing up, it was safe in those decades to watch the original Frankenstein, werewolf, Dracula, Mummy, Creature from the Black Lagoons, because those films were already 20, 30, whatever plus years old. So it was safe for us, but yet they were creepy, they were imaginative, and that's what I like about what a lot of like Tim Burton does, that he can reach children on one level and get them a little nervous, and he could reach an adult with the comedy and the absurdness on a different level. So he kind of like grabs your whole audience. And I think maybe that's his background, having worked for Disney for years. And that's what I like about something like Penny Poisonberry. Originally, it was going to be like it was going to be more young adult. And I felt that the material played better to a younger audience who still would appreciate seeing the pictures. This is what this character looks like, and this character speaks like this to other characters. And, I like the expressions on their faces. That's what I love about graphic novels, is that you're not giving too much away, but at the same time, you're not just saying what they do, you're showing what they do. And one idea reinforces the other and makes it exciting to young people, and it gets them reading. I mean, reading is so important. I mean, why would we not do more of this? But you know,
You and I had kind of touched on this when we met at the Long Island Convention of Horror in February. February? March?
yes, there was the end of
Yes.
February until March 1st. Yeah. Great show.
But
Next year, let's everybody show up.
yes, it was so much fun. Um, but we were talking a little bit about the fact that I don't think so much anymore, but there used to be more of a stigma around comic books and graphic novels where they're quote unquote not reading, but their kids learn more new words in comic books than they do in a standard text. And I have this tradition where I go back and forth. Anytime I need to sort of rebuild my attention span, I start with comic books. I
Oh,
then venture
wow.
into a graphic novel, go to some short stories, a novella, and then I'm back to, reading a full novel. But it's nice. It paces it out. It gives you this breath of fresh air to take in new stories in shorter bursts. And I think that there's something really exciting about that because you get to live in that world a little bit longer than you've actually spent reading it once a comic book or a graphic novel is done.
Wow, nice. It's like you crashed from society, and it's like I have to rebuild my attention span. That's an interesting way of putting it. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I listen to books on audio. I read novels. I do a little bit of everything. And when I decided to, it was somewhere around COVID, the beginning of COVID, it was like the industry was changing. I didn't think I was going to be teaching college anymore because they put us online. And I'm not sure if you're fans are aware of this, but we both graduated from School of Visual Arts,
Yep.
from the film department, no less. I think I graduated a few years before you, maybe more
Just a
than a
few.
few. And I think it was a great foundation. It was a great foundation for me, um,
Absolutely.
to jumpstart into what part of the career in the entertainment industry I wanted to be in. And that was originally mostly stop motion animation, which was a great, that was the inspiration for me. Having grown up decades ago and watching Gumby and Davy and Goliath and the original King Kong, which was all stop motion. Um, so from there, it is a nice leaping point. I mean, I remember reading comic books when I was very young, and there was an average of 200 to 300 words per page. If you could actually imagine that today, because now you go into a store and you pick up a comic book, it's an average of probably 50 words a page. You'll find a page that may have 150 words, and then there's like one or two pages of just super violence and and a splash page. And I give the credit to the artist because the work can be, it's not always, but can be spectacular. And I get it, but I feel as if something I remember when I was reading the Harry Potter books, what, 20 years ago? I guess it's been about 20 years when they came out. And there were these great little images above every chapter, and they were just beautifully imaginative, and they got you sucked into the chapter, and the chapters were just the right length before you needed another little image, and every chapter had its own chapter title, which gave you a little feeling of what's coming up. And I think that's part of what's missing today from comic books in general. There are not enough words, you know. That's what I like about indie books, that indie comics, and I think they've made a great leap forward because you can just page through an indie book and you could find the book that fits your reading agenda. And I think the biggest problem with indie books, which is probably the biggest problem with comic books in general, it's the same problem, but it hurts indie books more, and that would be the cost of the actual issue. Whereas, if you're picking up a detective comic and Batman is on the case of some new villain, and he's got to look at all the clues and figure things out, and there's room for a lot of words to describe and to lay things out. And a large company like DC, which is owned by Warner Brothers, they could afford to pump the books out. And that's like a giant TV commercial. They want you to watch the movies, they want you to watch the animated TV series. Um, so that's all well and good. But when you're an indie publisher, you're faced with that comic book price. And if you don't really pack your comic, your issue, your 22 pages with as much information as possible, the person could just fly through your $10 book or your $7 book or your $6 book. They could go through it in a couple of seconds. And many times when I was researching my new company, which is Comic Book Kid Publishing, uh, I looked at a lot of indie books, a lot of the mainstream, and more than half the time I felt cheated. I felt like I just dropped $6, $8, $10 for this book, and I blew through it in just a couple of minutes. And it's not that I felt that the material wasn't good. It's not that. It's just I didn't feel like I got my money's worth for the amount of time I spent going through the book. So I may want to go read it again. And it's like, it's pretty simple. I got it. It just wasn't there. In
Yeah.
fact, that's one of the things about, we were talking about puzzles a few minutes ago, where if I pay $30 for a 1,000-piece puzzle, I know I'm locked in for hours and hours and hours. I'm getting my $30 worth, you know.
Absolutely. And I think that's where, kind of like what I had touched on earlier, being able to live inside of the world of these comics after the cover is closed, that becomes so important. That's where, you know, The characters really have to speak for themselves. The world has to speak for themselves. And there is a blessing and a curse of the industry standard, right? The industry standard is there for the big companies like Marvel and DC. It's there to make sure that they are keeping up with their, multiple issues of Spider-Man that happen every month. Um, and that's great. It serves them because, like you said, it's a big commercial for their next project. But that same industry standard doesn't help us independent creators because we don't have the guaranteed longevity of the next issue. We don't have the guaranteed success of 22 pages being enough to really hook an audience for the long haul. And then getting into the printing costs of the thing, it costs us a lot more than a studio that has their own printing press. We're working with third parties. We're looking at who is going to help us out, give us the best deal, and make our book look the best. I just went through this with my own comic book, a short Halloween comic. Um, but it's a lot to look at, especially like you said, you've funded most of this yourself so far. So
Yeah.
now making sure that your audience is invested and wants to invested and able to get the most out of this world. You're putting yourself out there to make, you said, around 100 pages of this, right?
Yes. Yes.
That's not what they're going to get in a comic shop from the average, mass market book. I think
Right.
that's where the indies really come in at the top, where we're willing to understand our audience a little bit more. We know that they have a finite amount of funds and we have a finite amount of resources. And so we try to meet in the middle and make sure that they get the most out of that experience.
I mean, I've been to enough comic shops, no matter where I go to. I do travel around the tri-state area, more than the tri-state area. Um, and I try to visit shops and just, I'm very good at listening what's going on. I'll go into a store and there's always somebody behind the counter having a heated conversation with two or three people in front of the counter. And you learn so much from just sitting there and being invisible and absorbing the information. And I've done enough research online as well. And if I remember, just throwing some numbers out here, your average book that comes out today from Marvel, for example, they probably print about 80,000 copies. I might be wrong, and I'm hoping if I am wrong, some of your listeners would let you know, and you can let me know. But um, basically, the point I'm trying to make is that companies like Marvel and DC don't have to charge whatever. What is the number today? It's about 5.99, four ninety
It's
nine.
about $6 an issue.
Yeah, it's about six
Um,
thousand. They don't have to charge that. They really don't.
yeah,
Um, Whereas people like you and I and other independent publishers, we have to charge close to $10 an issue because of just the whole printing process and how many we could actually afford to publish. So one route I went with my Spontanea book, which um, the paperback is available on Amazon and also on Ingram Spark because that's what libraries like to order from. Um, that contains the first 6 issues of Spontanea. So that was a lot for me to get done. And I could have gone the route of, print on demand, which means it's going to be all digitally printed. And there's nothing wrong with the quality. It's spectacular. The problem is that if you do that, it's going to cost the indie publisher about $3 a book, give or
yeah,
take. Maybe you could find a place for $2.75. Maybe you could find but most of them are going to be around $3 a book. So in order to make any kind of profit, you got to put out X amount of dollars of your hard-earned money to get X amount of books and to sell those books. So it becomes problematic. What I did with Spontanea, those first 6 issues, is I ordered 2,000 copies of every issue. And luckily, I have a small storage facility where I can put all these boxes of books. And the reason was that now I got the cost per book down to $1.25,
yeah,
maybe a little bit less. And it allows me, and then when I still sell the book, usually at about $10 an issue. These are the original issues. They're not digitally printed. They are offset printed. They are the first printing, And whenever I do trade shows, I let everybody know it, that these are original offset printed. It's the first printing. They are one of a kind. And those are the books I sell. I have a limited amount, but it allows me to also make some special deals where I could turn around and say, you're buying the first book, I'll give you issues 2 for free. And I'll throw it in on a regular basis. And for the same $10, I still made a profit. But what's more important for me is I made a grassroots connection to a new fan. Hopefully, they'll come back. And I have had people come back to me at other shows and go, I saw you at the Long Island Convention of Horror, and here I am seeing me at a library or something, and they would buy issue 2. And that's, to me, that's golden. That's absolutely golden to do something like that. But I think that's one of the things that's really hurting the industry and getting younger people hooked on reading comics is that $6 a book is too much. We have to charge that as indie publishers, but Marvel and DC do not. They choose to, and if you look back in the 60s, so a book like Amazing Spider-Man number 50 or something, there must have been close to 500,000 copies published, printed in those days. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And what's harder to believe is how few of them are in that high, what we call a 9.0 or a 9.2 or 9.4. You could find them, you could purchase them from collectors, but they cost quite a lot. But those are the ones that survived in great condition. Those are the people who took them, put them in the bags, put them away in the closet where it was real dark, and they never took them out for a very long time. But they published so much more in those days, and I think we've traded off a lot. The younger generations that are so hooked on video games and short form entertainment, which would be like TikTok and wherever else you're connected to, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Blue Sky or whatever, they get so hooked on the short form of 10 seconds of entertainment, 30 seconds of entertainment, 1 minute or 1.5 minute and a half of entertainment. I think they don't have the attention span. I hope I'm wrong. I hope somebody who knows the statistics can prove me wrong. I'd be thrilled. But I feel like trying to really grab a younger audience, and I don't mean your teens. Although teens included, I also mean people in their late teens, early 20s, late 20s, trying to get them interested in reading comics. Sometimes it's a little difficult. I think, I also teach college. I teach at School of Visual Arts. Got to throw that in because they've been really good to me. I like the film department a lot, which is where I am now. I'm
I
also in
loved
the
it
fine
there.
arts department, and we do crazy stuff there. I love the chairs of both departments. They've been very kind and supportive to any crazy idea I have, and I do have plenty. And I talk to students on a regular basis, and I think what the students aren't quite realizing is I'm learning more from them than they are from me, and I'm a wealth of knowledge. I've been in this industry for decades, and I've worked on almost everything. I've worked with some very famous actors. Some I would talk about because they were great people, and some I would never talk about because they gave me some anxiety. But it's always a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun, and I allow the students to tell me what's going on. That I love, to tell me what they're interested in, what are they watching, you know.
That keeps you as a creator connected to what's happening in the world, in the industry, and you got to see that this is the perfect time to bring a Penny Poisonberry into the world because of this great resurfacing of the Gothic and this sharing of that across generations.
I like the expression you used was the Gothic Renaissance.
Yes,
I
I
didn't know there was
firm
such a
stance
thing,
we're
but I
back in
love
a
it.
Gothic Renaissance.
So we're going to credit you with coining the phrase.
I wish I could take credit for it. I think it's been floating around a little bit. Um, but yeah, with all of these things coming back, it's nice to see that we have that accessibility to new Gothic material. There are new, fresh minds bringing modern day ideas into the classic form of the Gothic. And
Yeah.
I also do want to point out, just based on this conversation we've just had, how much care you've put into your previous work And just to remind our listeners that that's the kind of care you're going to be putting into Penny Poisonberry.
Oh, yeah. So I could talk about Spontanea for hours. So one of the things about Spontanea was I wanted to create something that was original from me. And in order to do that, I wanted to make sure that I owned the IP, the intellectual property, which meant I had to go the distance and I had to get it trademarked. So I wanted to be sure that the title of the comic was the name of the actual character so that it becomes one big trademark, which is a whole process. I see online there's always somebody trying to get you to, oh, you could trademark your character yourself and you just pay $50. And honestly, I never quite bought into that. I do have a lawyer. He was very instrumental in giving me the correct route to get something trademarked. It took well over a year to actually finalize that,
Wow.
and it did cost a reasonable amount of money. But to me, the benefit outweighs the effort that I put in or the amount of money that I invested, because it is an investment. It's not throwing money out the window. It's an investment into the name of the character. And I found that in the process, my Spontanea character was called something else originally. And I was ready to change the name 5 different ways from Friday. And what I found that Marvel and DC, over the decades and decades that they've been in the industry producing comic books, they trademark everything. So you really couldn't use a name that was similar to a name they used, even if your character was completely different, because you don't want to have that conversation with another lawyer from them saying, we have the trademark on this character, because that's fair, right?
Yeah.
They don't want anyone who's reading comics to be confused between the name of your character and the name of their character. Unfortunately, because they're such a large company, they could trademark hundreds and thousands of characters, and I can't. So my lawyer gave me some great advice. Make up a word. just make up a word, and that's how Spontanea came about. She's a character that does appear when you need her most, so Spontanea became the name of the character. You're talking about you asked me about how much care and effort I put in. So to give you an example, I was trying to find just the right artist. I didn't want art that was cartoony. I wanted it more traditionally comic book illustrated, where the characters are anatomically correct. And I would go online, mostly Facebook, and there are so many artists looking for work. It was very easy for me to say, send me your portfolio. And I would look online and I would choose. And from there, I would whittle it down to a few of the people, and I'd have to make a decision, sadly, based on my budget, what I could afford. So that was a big factor. So in order to find the right artist for my work, I created a test, and I would send the illustrator that I was looking to hire, I would send them a character sheet, and I would send them a script, and I have them do 1 page. More often than not, artists are looking for work, so they will volunteer to do it for free. And I said, no, I don't do that. I pay artists for their work. It's something I've always told my students at School of Visual Arts, is that artists don't work for free. You can work for cheap, but you should get something out of it. You don't work for free. I don't believe in the starving artist syndrome that we've probably been hearing since the dawn of time. You're a professional, and you should get paid for what you do. So I ended up paying quite a few artists to do a page for me that I've never used. I also believe in using NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, so that every artist who got at least 1 page of script from me and saw what the characters look like, they were willing to sign it. And I work with some artists from all over the world, and it's been a great experience. And that was my procedure in order to find the artist that I thought fit the bill of what I was trying to do. They could give me the look that I was looking for. I had some artists who would say, well, I like the manga style and I'll do your comic in my style. And it's like, I think you're missing the point. I don't want my comic in your style. I want my comic in the style that I started it in. And I want my characters look like my characters. But in a lot of ways that can't be helped, especially a character like Spider-Man, which has been around for like almost 70 years, and characters that didn't wear masks like Mary Jane and Peter Parker and some of the other characters. And you look at the way they looked back in the 60s, they looked very different in the
So
70s,
different.
different again in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. And now, like, if you put them together, you would look at them like, oh, these are all different people. Well, they're
Yeah,
different artists, and that's okay. Um, I like different artists' interpretation of the superhero characters, the ones in tights, because then you're getting a whole different feeling as to how they pose, how they fight, how they do the things they do. And I think that's really, really interesting. But as far as
absolutely.
like some of the human characters, I need to be able to recognize them.
Yeah,
Otherwise
even
it's a
just
whole
having that
different person.
general anatomy down, just to have some consistency elements. Some things have to remain. But I mean, where we are in the industry now, everything has a Bible, and we're not allowed to
Yes.
deviate from the Bible. But because these things started so long ago, those Bibles don't really exist. They were just kind of fast and loose, and from artist to artist, things changed. But I do see now, we're getting more variety in cover art, and we're getting more consistency throughout the books themselves. You can almost see what the standard Bible is for the current run of superhero comics.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I could go back to like the 70s if you went to a comic convention of any type, and there would be the creator writer of the comic, and it was like people were ready to carry them around on their shoulders. And the artists, they got their due also. But today it seems to be like completely around, like the artist is held up as God's gift to the world. And people are forgetting that, somebody put words in the mouth of the character and somebody created the character, you know? And I'm all for giving equal credit to both, but I'm feeling today like with this whole thing, variant covers, I don't know how far back variant covers was created. It's got to be like 30 years now, 20 years, something like that. And when I first heard about it, it just seemed to me like, oh, we could sell the same book twice. Like it was like
Yeah.
a way to just make money, because I remember those early days when I still collected everything on the newsstand. It was like, oh, there's a different Spider-Man cover. I had to have them all,
Yep.
you know, and so, but we do that on Kickstarter also. But that's not a bad thing. I see it on Kickstarter as it has a different purpose. So
Yeah.
you're buying one book, which is in this case a graphic novel, which is not 20 pages, it's over 100 pages. And these are different covers and they have a whole different look about them, which I think is a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Um,
I see that as almost like an opportunity for you to customize your bookshelf, right? You're picking the cover
yes.
that speaks to you the most because it's a thick book. It's going to sit on your shelf. It's going to be something you carry around with you. You want it to reflect not only the world of the comic, but how you relate to that world. So to have that option is just a nice opportunity to make it a little bit more personalized.
Yeah. So a little over a month ago was when I made the decision well, it was a very easy decision. It was like, well, I can't afford to to finish my penny Poisonberry. I need to go on a crowdfunding platform in order to get it done. And then I continued to do my research about the variant covers. And what I found was so you probably grew up reading Goosebumps, right?
Oh yeah. Love a
That was a
Goosebumps
big thing.
moment.
The thing about Goosebumps that even see again, I was already an adult and I had moved on to other things. I didn't read Goosebumps, but the thing that always stuck in my mind was those covers were outstanding.
Yes.
And I recently read an article about it, whereas I wish I knew the artist's name. I can't think of it right now. I've seen him at conventions. He really got screwed over a little bit by by the company that published it in one simple way that they didn't allow him to autograph the cover. The cover art was the cover to the book, and that was it. Now, could we find out who that artist was? Of course we could, but that's not the point. The artist,
So
yeah,
funny enough, as I guess payback, he is now selling signed posters of the original book covers. I have one
yes,
from the first book somewhere in here.
nice. Yeah, I mean, it's I imagine he's not in his 30s or his 40s. He's probably a little older. And what a fun thing to do is to go to pop culture cons and meet all the people that read those books and got them started into, moving up the line. It's like now I'm reading Stephen King. Now I'm reading, whoever else. It's really great. So what I read was the way they found him as an artist is that the publisher was looking for someone who could do a cover that would leap off the bookshelf, and it did.
Oh yeah.
That's not to, say that R.L. Stine and his writing style and his subject matter was not great. Of course it was. But, you don't walk down what we used to have, Barnes and Nobles and Britannos and all the bookstores that we used to have, the brick and mortar stores, and you just walk and your eyes saw that before you saw anything else. And you knew, oh, it's in the young adult section, so I could read that, you know?
So that's that taboo I was talking about earlier, where we're young and we see these quote unquote scary images, but it's geared toward us, so we know that it's safe for us to go and explore that. And I think to that the point that you're making about the Goosebumps covers, to have a variety of covers available for a middle grade horror graphic novel, you're 6 years old to 11 or 12 years old who are going to be looking for this, right? The
Yes,
first thing they're going to judge it by is the cover. You want art that speaks to that age range. So to really give them an option of, well, does this art speak to me or does this art speak to me? That's really going to bring it home even more.
yes, yes.
Um, so when it came to deciding on these two covers, what was that conversation like between you and your artists?
Ah, okay. So the illustrator of the book, Matsias, I had her come up with two very different looking covers that she penciled and she inked. And I asked her to color one of them any way she wants. Let it be completely her way. And that's the cover that has the stained glass window in the background. And then the other issue I gave to another artist, um, Martina Rossi. She is one of my other colorists. She worked on many issues of Spontanea. And what I told her specifically was, do you remember Goosebumps? And she lives in Italy and she says, of course, I grew up reading Goosebumps. I said, give me something that leaps off the page with the crazy colors. So she did her own thing. And you've seen the two covers. They're
I
very
have,
different.
and I'm so
And
grateful we get to share these with our audience.
good, good, good. That's exactly what my goal was, to have two covers that represented the same product, but they had a different point of view. So I'm hoping to grab, as much of the audience as possible. Because there are many times, I'm sure we've done this also, where you look at the cover and you go, eh,
We're
yeah,
all guilty of judging the book by its cover.
ah,
And it starts as young as that, 6 to 11, where you're starting to make your first reading decisions for yourself. You
yes.
want those things that speak to you.
Yeah. The Kickstarter, I'm going to have both covers on within the body of the text. I'm going to publish the first five issues, excuse me, the first 5 pages of the book will be there as well. And I'm sure we'll be able to drop in some character designs and anything else that we have. I'm going to have at least 3 or 4 videos. Um, and I think it will say everything it needs to say. I made sure that everybody involved put their their credits involved with their bios. I want everyone to feel comfortable backing the project and not thinking, I'm putting in $10, $20, $30, and I don't know if I'm ever going to see anything, because that is the curse when it comes to crowdfunding, right? Will you
Yeah.
ever see something back from what you've done? But I believe in the whole theory, very biblical theory of tossing your bread on the water. I believe what you put out is what you get back. So I've backed many friends' projects, sometimes as simple as $10, whatever, and I don't want anything in return. I just put it out there because it helps them, and then I repost and repost and repost until they get to where they're going.
Now, Carl, you even mentioned your grassroots approach with getting your stuff out there. You take this stuff on the road with you, you make sure you're accessible and you're meeting your audience hands on. Um,
Yes.
Something like that, I think one of the benefits is, and what I love about this world of conventions is being able to walk away, having had an experience and interacting with somebody responsible for creating something you love and having a signature from them. I'm sure you're going to be doing that on the road with this. Are you going to be offering any kind of like signed copies within the Kickstarter? How is that going to work for you also with your international artists?
Well, international is going to be a little difficult. Um, what I've been trying to figure out exactly that problem. I mean, for me, it's easy because when you do a Kickstarter, everything's coming from my company, my publishing company. So here I am. I'll be packaging everything myself. I'll be autographing every book. As far as my international artists are concerned, I haven't quite been able to solve that issue yet. I had one thought about creating a postcard or something that I could mail to them. They would autograph, send back to me. And it's become a little problematic logistically. The amount of money it costs to mail things, you know, 8,000 miles away.
Yeah.
We're talking Argentina, we're talking Sicily, we're talking South Africa, and then for them to spend, they would gladly spend the time to help me, but then they got to mail it back, and then I'm spending more money. The biggest problem I had is I didn't want to, post this Kickstarter and say I'm looking for $20,000. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted it to be reasonable, so I think we're looking for about 6,200 is what I'm looking for, and I honestly don't expect that to cover everything 100%. Whatever it doesn't cover, I am going to cover. I'm guaranteeing that if I reach my goal, which is 6,200, we're doing it. We're publishing it. I've all my artists, but none of my artists have worked for free. I pay them. I paid them for 75% of the book that is done. And because I believe in what I'm doing. And it's luckily at my age, I can do this. Go back a couple of decades, I could never have done this. But I invest in myself, invest in what I do. And Penny Poisonberry also, I mean, ultimately, I get to own it. It's my IP. I own this intellectual property. How do you go wrong with that?
Yeah.
So I get to go to new shows and I get to have a new product. And whoever saw me on Kickstarter would remember, like, oh yeah, I did invest in it, or I didn't invest in it. What else are you working on? There's a lot of options there. And I'm looking at Kickstarter as a great way to grassroots connect with people who are interested in a story that, doesn't have any of the pop culture icons that we've been looking at for the last 90 years. Something a
It's
little
truly a way to
original.
build a community to make these things a reality. And that does bring me to another point I wanted to cover with you.
Sure.
So this is self-contained. Um, do you see Penny Poisonberry having a resurfacing if fans really start to clamor for it and love it?
Yeah, I would love to do a second volume, and the script is done. I would call it
Amazing.
80% done. The reason I say 90% is the story, the concept, the ideas are done and they're scripted. What I usually change right up to the last second is dialogue. I sit there going, oh, another opportunity for a joke, another opportunity. Sometimes you could take that bubble that's got 35 words in it, and I could say the same thing in 20 words. So the dialogue piece goes right down just before I send it out to someone like Mika Myers, who does a lot of lettering he does Marvel, DC, independent. Mika's amazing. He's fast. He's good. I like his placement of the word bubbles and the way he does it. I think he's in Virginia. I don't even think he's on the East Coast here, but he's in Virginia. His work is good, and you'll see some of that in the Kickstarter. You'll see the first 5 pages of Penny Poisonberry. But right up to the last second, I will be changing some of the dialogue to just make it snappier, smarter, funnier, just give it a better feeling. But once I have the ideas down, my artists are working on the pages. We agree on the story flow as the way it goes down the page and the way it looks. And I'll be just making dialogue changes right up to the last second.
How much do you find your dialogue choices change based on what your artists present you with?
Oh, probably easily 10%, maybe 20%. Because, they'll draw something and I'm like, I never thought of that. I like the way the character's doing this or doing that. And sometimes you don't need to say what they're doing if you see them doing it. So I'll be like, oh, I don't need that sentence at all. Take that sentence out. But the artist had a great way of interpreting what I have.
So, Carl, where do you feel that the fear comes in middle grade horror in something like Penny Poisonberry?
I think the same place that it comes in with us. It's the fear of the unknown. What's going to happen next? What's strange about this character? Why are they different? How come maybe, they don't react to the bully the same way some other kids would? They don't give in to petty fears and things. So it's all about the unknown, because we're naturally, I think, since the dawn of time, we're afraid of the unknown, right? Isn't that really where fear comes from? What's going to happen? Well, you got to go to the doctor. Why? What's he going to do? Then your mind is, the imagination is, and it could be simple things, especially when it's like, well, Penny, listen, the state's on our butts and you got to go to public school, and it's like, well, I don't want to go to public school. I'm home. I read all day. I study philosophy. I study fencing. I play with my python and my giant tarantula. I mean, go to public school, what for? And then you find out, there's things like bullies. There's things like some nasty children who want to play pranks on you. And you realize the fear is completely different. But she's not the character that gives into fear. She was taught differently. And that's kind of part of the story of what I'm hoping to tell here. So the second book will be right after this one. As soon as I get this published, whether I have the backing or not, I'm going to start my artist working on the second volume. And that would be also about 100 pages.
That's amazing. So anybody who does get involved, gets invested in this story, in this world, there is hope they are going to get to see this expand even further.
Well,
I think
thank you.
that's another great thing. Just, as somebody who you get invested in something, you're going to want more of it. To know that there's more on the horizon is such a nice glimmer of hope.
I think that's the nice thing about a crowdfunding platform like Kickstarter, that, if you exceed your goal, you have options open. You don't have to worry about what your next, small goal is going to be. So I've tried a lot of different methods of getting my books out there. And Kickstarter was the next step for me to see if I can make a longer book. It's really funny. A conversation I have with creators all the time. They say, what exactly is a graphic novel? You're talking about a comic book. And it's like, well, that's an unfair evaluation. I think traditionally, the definition of a novel is a word count between 40 and 70,000 words. So to say graphic novel, obviously you're saying images, pictures, and novel, it better be over 40,000 words. And you could take any 5 or 6 comics, they're not 40,000 words.
No.
And that's something I'm looking to offer. I want somebody to sit down with the book and spend hours, if not a couple of days, enjoying the book. Maybe reading it once all the way through, going through it a second time, looking at the pictures, really appreciating what it's about, rather than just, oh, look, a fight scene, he killed him, he punched someone, he beat someone up, and then you're done with the book and it goes into your closet or your drawer, and then you never see it again. I'm looking for something that plays lengthy so that I could get, a network executive or a studio executive interested in turning it into an animated series, which I think would be a lot of fun.
Based on everything that I've seen for this so far, the first of all, the illustrations are so eye-catching. For all of our listeners who are into the Gothic scene, into the horror scene, I mean, you're here listening to the Hauntsville Cryptcast. I know that you are. So there's so much to draw from there. It's so visually appealing. And just from what I've gathered from talking to you and from some of the pieces that I've seen so far, it's going to be such an engaging world. So I'm
Thank you.
excited to see how the whole story unfolds. One thing that we touched on earlier in our conversation, and I see a lot in middle grade in some of these fantasy stories, there is the idea of venturing between worlds. Um, I think you had alluded earlier. Uh, does Penny, prior to the story, and if this spoils anything, just let me know it's a spoiler and we won't address it.
Okay.
Um, does she have pre-existing knowledge of the Gothic Kingdom, or is this something she comes into in the story?
She has no idea.
So she's in for just as much of a surprise as we are.
That's the goal.
Okay.
To me, that's also, it's not just part of the fun. I think it's also part of like where that uneasiness comes about. Like it's almost we've seen this so many times, and I think it always plays well where a child, or once they're an adult, they go to the parent and say, why am I different? Why am I not like them? And then there's that disclosure. Well, there's something we didn't tell you. And then it opens the door to a whole lot of um, things, that directions you could go, more storytelling. I think that's an important thing. And I'm not trying to make it sound like, oh, parents are always lying to their kids. They are. And, sometimes with good reason, sometimes with bad reason, sometimes, well, if you're just too young to really understand, you know, um, then you got to stretch the truth. You got to play it out. I think the biggest mistake any parent would make is to wait too long before they tell them the things that they should have told them maybe a year before or 5 years before. I mean, I know some people have like, no, I was 1 years old and my parents were saying no such thing as Santa Claus. And I'm like, dude, you missed out, man.
Yeah.
How come on? Come on, you missed out. You know, that was, Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy or, you know,
I made it all the way to
whatever.
sixth grade before my bullies took it away from me.
Yeah, those were the days. But I think again, so trying to find that perfect age, I guess is the toughest thing. Is when do you tell the child what they really need to know? And look, I can't judge another person. Being a parent, it's not easy. So you gotta like wing it. You gotta say to yourself, when is the right time to do this? When is the right time to say that? And then there's, life in general that gets in the way. They got to deal with school. They got to deal with kids that are, trying to beat them up and, and teachers that are ignoring them. And I come from a teacher family. I totally get the teacher thing. And there are times where you just have some students and you're like, I wish they were not in my class, and to try to be fair and honest with all of them. That's my goal. I believe I reached that, but I can't say I love all my students, but I do love most of them, and they're very interesting. I learn a lot from them. It's a great experience to get in there and say, what are you guys into? What do you read? Sadly, most very few hands go up when I say, you guys read books? Who reads books? Like one or two out of a class of 20 will raise their hands. And that makes me a little sad. That makes me like, this is a little crazy. You know, um, I used to be with the thesis committee in the film department. And that was one of the first things I used to say at at the end of the third year. I tell the students, you got a whole summer. Don't be locked into anything. Read books. Yeah, go
Yep.
see a couple of movies, go watch some TV, play some video games, but read like 3 or 4 novels during the course of the summer. It's not that hard. And if you need recommendations, I would give them recommendations. I'd say if you've never read a Stephen King book, go right for 11/22/63. It is an amazing book that really crosses a lot of lines in terms of horror, drama, historical fiction, um, an amazing narrative, something he was great at, creating a unreliable narrator where you think something is going on, but something really different is going on. Beautiful stuff. So, and it would only help you as a screenwriter, as a director. It can't hurt you. It
Yeah,
can only
the
make things
more that
better.
you take in of these different forms of media, if you're not diversifying beyond movies, you're selling yourself short.
Yes.
So to take in books, to take in graphic novels, to take in comic books, like I said, it's all part of my attention span rebuilding routine, but it activates different parts of your brain. You want to be engaged, you want to be fully immersed in storytelling as a whole. So you've got to take in everything that it has to offer.
What's also nice about that is it shows you start to appreciate the different formats of storytelling. The way
Yes.
you're going to tell a story in a graphic novel is different than the way you're going to do it in a short film, which is different again in a long form. Which is one of the things I really love about probably the newest thing in film production today is long form, where they call it a season, and it's but
We're getting the limited
it's not really
series.
when you could sit down and you could binge watch 8 hours of something. That's not really a season. It's a long form. It
Yeah.
could be one book. Um and I think that's a wonderful format to explore. Like I reread To Kill a Mockingbird. And then I was like, well, it's been years since I read that. And it's been decades since I saw the movie. Let me go back and watch the movie. So you watch the movie, and I'm sitting there going, wow, that movie's like 15% of the book.
Yeah.
And the other 85%, where is that? You know? And long form is the answer. To Kill a Mockingbird, make 8 1-hour episodes or even 7 1-hour episodes, you would get every part of that book in there. And it's just as good today as it was, in early 60s. I think yeah, early 60s when the movie was made.
Absolutely. So, Carl, we're about coming up on our
Okay.
time. I want to just really give our listeners more of a hook to get into what they should be looking forward to. So, I would love from you what you would say to get a middle grader into this world, to get the parents of a middle grader into this world, and as a millennial who loves everything that you have put forth into this world, what would you say to us?
I'd say reading is the key, and graphic novels is a great way to get somebody interested in the visual format, and the visual narrative storytelling is still such a beautiful art form. I hope it's around forever. And it's a great way to get kids interested in using their imagination. It hooks you back into, tactile. You can hold the book in your hand and you could take it with you, and you could stop and you could say, all right, I'm done with so many pages. I want to think about it a little bit. You could go back, you could reread it. It's a great story. I believe it's a great fantasy about a child who's battling everything. She's battling to find out her true identity. She doesn't quite know what it is. Her world has been filled with adults, her mother, her father, her weird uncle, and her pets are a giant tarantula, a giant rat and a giant python. And now she's got to interact with the rest of the world. And she's got to find out what that's about. She battles gender biases. She battles mean children, something she's never had to deal with before. So it's a great learning experience for her. And I think any child that reads the book, I think their imagination would just soar. It would be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Um, Now, typically at the end of our episodes, we like to give a recommendation. For an episode like this, I'm going to strongly recommend that our listeners follow along with the upcoming Kickstarter. Check it out, back it if it is speaking your language, because I know it's speaking my language. Carl, where can everybody find you and keep an eye out for the Kickstarter itself?
Oh, okay. So my website is Comic Book Kid Pub. PUB is short for publishing because that's my company. Um, or I could be emailed at comicbookkidpub@gmail. Very easy to find. And I'm going to make that announcement on my website as soon as we know what our launch date is. My guess is about 3 weeks from now, give or take. And I will be at MCon in East Meadow Public Library. They have a show on the 25th and 26th of April. Great people there. Beautiful libraries out here. I'm from Queens originally. I live on Long Island now, but you guys have beautiful libraries out here. Just
Thank
absolutely
you.
amazing. So they were very kind to offer a guest spot at their MCon, EMCON. I'll also be at CradleCon in May, which is always a great show. If you've never even been to the Cradle of Aviation, you have to go. It's an amazing museum. And that's in May. In April, I'll be in, oh boy, just went right out of my head. That's the latest. I guess the best thing to do would be watch my website, which is comicbookkidpub.com, and I'll make that announcement. And you had a question for me, did you not?
I do.
Oh,
So
great.
we, as is tradition on the Hansel Cryptcast, we end with a fear of the day.
Oh,
So I'm going to give you a phobia, and you
okay.
can take a shot at guessing what it means, and then we'll
Okay.
reveal the answer at the end.
Oh,
Your fear of the day is nostophobia. Nosto phobia.
I know exactly what that is.
Do you?
Yes, I do. Oh, you want me to tell you?
I would love that.
It's the fear of finding toenail clippings in your food.
It's not, but if there is
No,
not a phobia for that, I think we need
I'll
to
bet you
name
there
it.
is. I'll
I
bet you there is.
I always say if it exists, somebody's scared of it, and that's where my
Yes.
phobias come from. Nostophobia, I picked for this episode because of the differences between Penny's true home and the home that she's living in presently.
Oh,
Nostophobia is the fear of returning home.
wow. Wow. All right, that's going into the script.
Thank you all for tuning into the Hansel Cryptcast. I'm Anthony.
I'm Carl Paolino. Thank you very much.
Happy haunting.